Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome. I hope you guys are having an amazing Thursday, the day after Valentine's Day. I hope life was wonderful for everybody wherever you are. We're going to get a little bit of a chance to peek behind the curtains of a place we don't often get to talk about or hear about, but that comes after the regular scheduled maintenance, guys. If you guys aren't taking part in our movement to defund the cabal, there are hundreds of us doing so already. We are taking billions away from the Black Rocks, Vanguards, and State Streets. You guys can find information below on that. That is the Patriot Switch movement. And if you guys have any questions about precious metals, gold, silver, and all those kinds of things, you guys have to talk to one of the gentlemen over at New World Precious Metals. You guys will find that link on our website as well. These guys are creating solutions to help people protect their investments or portfolios, and all of that kind of stuff from the insanity that's going on here. And we're actually going to be starting a show sometime in the next couple of weeks with one of the gentlemen from New World Precious Metals, and you guys will be able to engage with him one-on-one on some of that stuff. So tonight, there's a familiar face and a new guest to the show, Lani and Doris. Welcome back, Lani and Doris. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you join us here tonight to share your story, which, unbeknownst to most others out there, Lani is intricately involved in. It's not that Lani is just our favorite guest, although she almost is. But, Lani, you've been fighting more fights than even we knew about over here.
Well, they all just seem to converge at the same point, you know.
Well, this is some of the interesting stuff we're going to get into, but one of the first things that I want to talk about, and bring this, and this will lead into Doris' story, is you didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about this on our show. This was not a public discussion. This was not a case that was in the public space at all, because Doris, you were pretty much gagged over this, your situation, for the last 3 years until a couple of weeks ago. And this was where Wayne come into the picture. Lani says, I have a friend that can now talk. Do you want to talk? Do you want to share her story? And so, Doris, welcome. I know all the anybody else out here is going to recognize or know is Lawyers for Truth, that you've got listed there as. So you've been a part of working for the people for a long time in what's been going on, and you've been paying a price behind the scenes that nobody's aware of. So welcome.
Thanks so much.
Tell us where this starts.
Thanks so much for having me, Wayne. Yeah, I really think it's important that the story gets out, because I don't think the public is generally aware of the Law Society's role in keeping the government narrative going, and how they are essentially changing the way that lawyers practice law. So, and yes, I am able to speak publicly now because the Law Society themselves have now placed their citations against me on their website. So they have now publicized sort of their pursuit against me. Up until now, everything's been required to stay private and confidential. And secondly, I may need to locate witnesses to assist me in fighting this case that the Law Society is bringing against me. So here I am.
Well, that's a big point that I don't want to lose in this. We've heard about the fights in the courts, the provincial courts, Supreme Courts, federal courts, all of these different courts, CPSOs, all of these different entities and jurisdictions, but there's been no ability for anybody to speak to what's been going on with the law societies. Now, just to set the stage here a little bit, you're in Alberta. This is the Alberta Law Society, and my question is then are each of the provinces' law societies independent of the like, how does this work? And so I guess I'm trying to gauge it where in the hierarchy of abuse this abuse by the Alberta Law Society is kind of situated.
Yes, each province has their own law society that governs the lawyers of their province. There are ways to also practice in other provinces, like a mutual respect for lawyers going into another province, as long as it's not full time, as long as you're kind of doing it temporarily. So there's sort of that reciprocity that goes on there. But the Law Society generally is there to govern the conduct of lawyers, their competency. One of the main things that the Law Society does is make sure that our trust accounts, which is essentially our lawyers' money, that they are run properly, and so they have a very important role. I certainly think that they have a valid place, right? It's just that they've now gone off in left field, and like I said, they're changing the way that lawyers are practicing law, and essentially we can't even practice law. Historically, the Law Society, they talk about our loyalty to our clients, right? So that's always been very important, the trust relationship between a lawyer and his or her client. However, now they've gone into, like I said, left field, and really following the government narrative is really all that they are interested in at this point, it seems. Would you agree with that, Lani?
Yes, it's taken a different direction, and people always ask and they say, well, why are you so concerned about this? Well, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but they're also prescribing our education for us. So if you take a look at Doris's situation, and we'll get into, what the offense is, but, you can see that eventually, I always tell my clients this, I say, you're going to be at your home and you're going to leave your house and you're going to say, hey, I got this problem. And you're going to go out looking for a professional. And you're going to get out there and you're going to realize you're a round peg and that's a square hole and nobody can help you, because if we are boxed in and told this is what you have to subscribe to, whether, it's the type of clients you take or the type of thoughts that you believe in, that's where it gets scary. That's where we have to start paying attention, because I do have people calling my office already all the time saying, I can't get a lawyer. I can't find somebody who will even take my call. There's a lot of overwork going there, but there's also a narrative that's paving the path out there too. And that's what we have to watch for. Yeah.
Well, this is something that I see and hear a lot of is frustration and stress. People can't find representation, whether lawyers are otherwise preoccupied or unable. But what your situation is a little bit different. And I guess we should kind of bring that out here, is that Lani, you're the representative, the attorney representing Doris in an action by the Law Society against Doris. So this is one of those backroom court type systems that is really not in the public space at all. So you got lawyers representing lawyers against lawyers, in essence. And this is not just a paper story. Doris, they arrested you at an airport.
Well, that is separate from the Law Society, but yes, that is.
But there's and I guess that's kind of my way of throwing it all out on the table and right. Saying this is a crazy story, and the intersection of all of those things that Lani was mentioning. This is something that we're seeing and hearing consistently from different attorneys, and we've really made a shift this year, 2024, into a different type of environment where there's a lot more proactive litigation going on. Cases have made their way through the system. We had Leighton Gray on a couple of nights ago, a guy that won the Ingram had the Ingram case, which kind of really changed everything yet again. So you guys have been in this narrow hallway of a challenge, and Doris, you can start wherever you want with all of that, but now it's like the roof got ripped off of everything in the last month, I guess, right?
Right. Well, I haven't, as far as I know, the Law Society has not gone after lawyers who have represented the freedom side on some of these cases, these more public cases. I'm not aware of that. And I think part of the reason is because the courts have controlled the outcomes of those cases. I mean, we've had a few wins here now, which is awesome. But we were losing pretty badly there for a long time. And so I think the courts were able to sort of take care of that, right? And so the Law Society, as far as I know, allowed these lawyers to litigate the cases. But mine was different. And the reason it was different was because in 2020, when the mandates started to come out, we formed Lawyers for Truth. And part of what Lawyers for Truth was doing, we weren't litigating in the courts or anything like that. We were trying to help the public that was searching very hard for what their rights were in the context of something like the lockdowns, masking, vaccination status, those types of things. When COVID hit, that's when we got together. And one of the things that the Law Society really encourages is pro bono work. They, throughout my career, I received many notices, like that we are to help the public. We are to do some pro bono work where we don't get paid. And that's exactly what I did. I was not a human rights lawyer, but I was not a constitutional lawyer. But when COVID hit, I looked into it and I spent hours going through the Human Rights Act and cases and learning about how these were a breach of our rights. And with the masking, it violated, or people would have both medical or religious exemptions. And that's how I would advise people, right? And anyway, so we set up the website for Lawyers for Truth, and they were able to contact, I was a volunteer for Lawyers for Truth. And so I would then get the appointment and I would be able to speak with many people who were, like I said, searching for what their rights were. And what I did was I would assist them by doing up a letter, and I would also do it in a card format stating that they were exempt from masking requirements and later on also the right of entry for vaccinations. So it was different. I wasn't litigating, but I was giving people the tools to navigate exercising their rights, like in their everyday life when they go to a grocery store or a restaurant or whatever. And was also assisting like with schools. I was writing to many school principals, superintendents, notices of liability, all that kind of stuff. So, and was very busy. We had so many inquiries we couldn't keep up. So that's what I was involved in. And again, doing exactly what the Law Society always said that we're supposed to do. So then in May of 2021 was the first time the Law Society contacted me. So I understand now, because I finally got some disclosure that there were business owners that were contacting them. I guess some doctors were actually contacting them because people were using these letters that I was providing to them. And so they would, it sort of got back to the Law Society that way, that's how I was doing it. And so they contacted me, they wrote me a letter, they felt that it was unprofessional. They asked me to please clarify like how, this wasn't professional because it sounded quite threatening, the notice of liability part. And I wrote back and I said, like, look, I'm like, first of all, these are, the rights that individuals have, which is really, not their concern. Like we're as lawyers, we're allowed to debate, right? So, and advocate. So they don't really have a right to step in at that stage. But I also indicated that there was a need. I said, there's a lot of people that have very dire health conditions and like really cannot wear a mask, right? And they can't access, their usual businesses, go about their daily lives. And I said, please help, please encourage other lawyers to do something as well and to speak out, because the truth is not out there. So I wrote them back with that. And I also said, like, I have my own exemption. Can you please help me? And I didn't hear anything for about 6 months. So I didn't really know what was going to happen. But then that Christmas, I think they were getting more and more complaints throughout the year. And then I was contacted by an investigator, a second investigator, by the way, of the Law Society. And he requested an interview. So at that point, I did arrange an interview in early 2022, and I had a lawyer as well. So the letter that he sent me was fairly threatening in that, it's like, here's the discipline process. You're entitled to have a lawyer. So it indicated to me that it was quite serious, right? but it was also vague in terms of like, they couldn't really identify what I had done wrong, right? So I would write to them and I'd say, how did I breach my professional obligation? And they would never answer the question. In fact, they said, we don't have to tell you. I'm like, okay.
You're guilty of a crime, but we're not going to tell you what you've done.
Right. And to this day, they still haven't identified what they're looking for a sanction. Like, are they looking to suspend me? Are they looking to disbar me? Are they looking to fine me? I have no idea. They won't say what they're after. And but anyway, so I went through an hour interview, or close to an hour, and then my lawyer had to go to an appointment. And so they wanted to continue that interview. And then my lawyer had to resign because of a conflict of interest had arisen. So then I was without a lawyer. So there's a little bit of like a delay in getting my second lawyer. Lani's my third, by the way. And then what happened? Oh, and then they decided to demand all my client files, because in my first interview, they asked me like, how many of these have you done? And so then they were using the information that they were getting from this interview, and they were like, and I'm telling you, like, demands about getting all client files. And we did it by donation. We weren't even charging for this, because we wanted to make sure that everybody who wanted advice on exemptions was able to get it. We were there for the public. We really were. And, we asked for donations to kind of help us, cover costs if you can. But if you can't, you know what? It's no problem. We're going to take care of you.
I was sending thousands of people to you guys that we were all in this, in it together. So I guess we're all interconnected in this in some way, shape, or form. So this is amazing to hear, what 3 years later, where this is where it's going. So sorry for interrupting. It's just it resonates. We're a part of what happened to you.
Right. Anyway, so then I get my second lawyer, who's out of Ontario, and so they continue with their demands, and they're getting fairly aggressive, right? They want that more interview time. Oh, in the meantime, I'd actually gone to the Law Society. So this was in during that period between when my last lawyer had to resign and before I got the second lawyer. I said, look, like, I'm happy to talk to you guys. I'll come down to the Law Society office, and I am happy to sit down and have a conversation too, because this is actually a fog. I said, I don't even know where I am in the process. Like, I've had 2 investigators, and both of these investigators also indicated that I was not under investigation. So I'm like, well, why? Like, usually there's sort of a process to be followed, and there was no process here. It was just like
2 investigators, but no investigation.
No, yeah, but I'm not under investigation. So then I'm like, look, I'm happy to talk to you guys, because I'm actually like I said, I'm in a fog. I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't even know where I'm in the process, blah, blah, blah. And then they, it was a bit of a hassle in terms of getting to see them, because then they didn't really want to see me. Like, but then they're like, okay, we'll see you, but you have to bring all your client files with you, and it's going to be a recorded interview. And I was like, no, I'm not doing a recorded interview without a lawyer. And I'm not bringing client files. But they eventually agreed. So, but there was only one investigator. So I did meet with one. It was the summer of 2022. And so all the vaccine mandates at that point had disappeared. There was no masks at the time, and the vaccine mandates had disappeared. However, I go into the Law Society office. The first thing they ask for is my vaccine passport. I'm like, yeah, no. Anyway. But I did actually meet with the investigators off the record. So it did happen. But it wasn't like I wasn't, making an attempt, right? So did that, and then got the second lawyer. And then, like I said, there was more demands and letters back and forth and that kind of thing. And questioned, like, he kept asking the question, what did she breach? What's going on here? Blah, blah, blah. And could never get a straight answer. In fact, they would put in writing, we don't know. Or something like that. Or we don't, it's not yet determined. That's the one that they use.
Not yet determined.
Yeah. So then, I had instructed my second lawyer, like, don't even bother responding. If they're not going to give us the information that we need to actually, like, defend this, I'm done. So I've attempted to work it out. I'm not giving up my client files. Those are highly confidential. I'm not giving them a list, okay?
That's Stasi type of enforcement. I mean, that attorney-client privilege is the whole foundation of your guys' entire industry, right?
Exactly. And none of my clients, nobody that I helped during that period complained. It was not anybody that I had contact with. It was the random doctor or store owner or whatever that didn't like it, right? That was sending information to the Law Society. But none of my clients, to my knowledge, ever complained. And there's none of that in the disclosure that they provided. So anyway, so again, time passes, and then they erupt again. And then at that point, that's when Lani came in, because they were now moving it to the hearing phase. So we had 3 pre-hearings. So now they have this process, this pre-hearing process, and they have not provided me with a Section 59 notice by the executive director. So that's what is the impetus to get this process going. Like, if they want to take me to a hearing, I need a notice from the executive director that sets out the particulars of what I've done wrong, and it's supposed to set out the sanctions that they're seeking. We don't have that. They then provided me with disclosure, like this, I think was about 3 or 4 months ago. It's a disclosure package. It's 800 and some pages. And in it is an investigative report. I'm like, really? Like, you told me this whole time that I was not under investigation. What else? And like, they basically, like, it was all creeping. Like, they went on the internet, they went on my Facebook page, I guess. Like, they were trying to find out who Lawyers for Truth were. Like, there's like corporate searches. Anybody associated with Lawyers for Truth, like, they've got like stuff that they could find. Like, it's a hodgepodge of, it's like, it felt really creepy, actually, like, to get this. But so that's what they did. And then yeah, like I said, Lani and I have been to 3 pre-hearings now. We still don't really know what they're looking for, and they've scheduled like a proceeding for 2 weeks in October.
So the Law Society is planning a trial of you for 2 weeks,
Right.
for things that are already over and done in the past, and that was just simply you doing your job, at the protecting the people within their rights, not breaking any laws, and they can't make any up, and they're still hunting for something to try.
Well, let's reframe this. Doris took an oath when she became a lawyer to uphold the rule of law, right? Ingram, the case, has come along, and you just had that on your show, and they've said that these mandates are illegal. Okay, so if you put 2 and 2 together, what does that add up to? So are we going to pursue a lawyer who is upholding her oath regarding the rule of law and not imposing, like, in terms of those illegal mandates? This is what we're now struggling against.
Right. In the face
Standoff.
within that 800 and some pages, I mean, there is a whole bunch of CMOH orders, and I'm like, those are gone. Like, those are gone. Those were not legal orders. So you're pursuing me on something that's been declared ultra vires, the Public Health Act, number 1. And secondly, something like the travel mandate, for example, you'll recall that the court said it was moot. Well, we haven't now had mask or vaccine mandates for, I don't know, 1.5 years, 2 years, whatever it is. And you're pursuing me on something that should be considered moot.
This, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this. How here now, in a sense, I can understand why they had you silenced, why you weren't allowed to talk about this, Doris, because this is such a banana republic, kangaroo court, hunting, stalking, persecution against you, but So I could understand why they wouldn't want you talking about this or anybody else out there hearing about this kind of because I don't know what to call it. This is not this isn't ignorance. This isn't ineptitude. How do we process and understand what they're doing and their justifications for existence is and you alluded, there's a need for this organization, but this most certainly isn't it.
Yeah.
But so I'm kind of surprised that they gave you the opportunity to speak publicly. Well, that may have been, just an oops on somebody's part. This is I can't.
I wouldn't say it was an invitation to speak publicly. The problem is that, well, if you just look at the Canadian system of law, you're supposed to know the case set out against you so that you can provide a full defense, right? She's missing the legislation. Let's just clarify that. The Legal Profession Act states that there is to be a Section 59 notice signed by the executive director of the Law Society stating a reasonable detail of the particulars of the offense. We're missing this. And the point I have to make about that, and it all comes down to the same pattern of conduct and behavior, whichever case you want to talk about, is that they're using policy to try to redesign our legislation. And this is an important point. And this is happening to Doris right now because they're using pre-hearing conference, all these policies that they've made up, and they're saying, that they've created. I'm not trying to say they're fictional. They're real to them. And those are what makes the Law Society function. But they're using the policy to subvert what has to happen under legislation. And what the public needs to know is they need to start understanding the law so they can see when this is happening. Because when there's a piece of legislation, that means our legislators through Parliament, they pass it all. That's what's supposed to govern our land. Now, you can't have people, whether they're principals or teachers or lawyers or anybody else, writing their own private policy to change that legislation or to get out of it or get around it. You can't do that. And so I encourage the public to look at this closely because there's a theme emerging here. And that theme is just that they're writing policies to try to shape the law the way they'd like it to be read. So
I'm going to grossly oversimplify this, but in essence, this is the sheriff and the deputy following the law, and the town bully coming in saying, "No, I wrote a new policy in our town. Your law no longer applies. We're going to tell you down the road when we write the policy that actually is going to keep you in jail."
Exactly. And you ignore the legislation over there, the law, because we're telling you, and you can read our policy, this is the way it is. Now think about COVID and click that into play, right? It's exactly the same thing. And this is exactly what Doris is dealing with. I had said it with the other case that I'm working on, but the people that upheld the rule of law were the ones that were punished the harshest. Mm-hmm. They really were.
That inversion of law where you became the criminal for following the law. Exactly. Yeah. Again. So this is brilliant, that we're able to have this discussion because now we're seeing this exact same pattern repeating itself across every spectrum. And now we're actually getting firsthand testimony of how this is affecting your job as lawyers and the defenders of us out there that are trying to defend the rule of law, and we have to support and be aware of that. Otherwise, if they get away with it, then it becomes what they want, right?
Well, when you think about it, though, the lawyers are the last defenders between the public and the law, are they not? Because right. If you take out that whole layer, and I know there's a lot of arguments for that, okay? I get it. But if you take out that layer, it's kind of like what I told you. You're leaving your house, you got this big problem, you're a round peg, and all you're finding out there are square holes. You can't find something that's going to fit for you, you know, and this is what we have to look at. We absolutely, because they're thinning the herd down is what's happening, right? We're getting all these ideologies, propaganda, when really, if you boil it all down, what Doris is doing is simply upholding her oath. She's got a clean record. Hey, she's got a free mug coming her way, doesn't she?
Actually, yeah. So last year I actually got a certificate because I had so it would have been our insurer that was sending out these certificates along with a letter basically saying how proud they were of me because I had such a clean record for 20 years, no claims. You get like a free mug or free Starbucks card. You have a choice of your prizes or something like that. So I have a beautiful certificate about a lawyer I've been for a long period of time. And, you know, and then in the same vein, we've got the Law Society, and they are linked. They try to say that they're separate, but I've been through it enough to know that they're separate when they want to be and they're together when they want to be. So, yeah.
I think you've just explained why you're the one that they must silence. How dare you? Because you're just so darn good at doing the right thing that they're bad. They feel bad that they actually acknowledge you for that. So you know that's the good way cancel culture works, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, yeah. So this has been 3 years. A lot of chasing tails, for lack of a better word for it. Where are you at here now? So your last hearing, you were a lot. Things changed, but if I'm not mistaken, your last hearing, we spoke before the Emergencies Act verdict, and probably just before or right around the time of the Ingram case. So. From both of you guys' perspective, how has the environment changed? I mean, this has got to be like winter to summer.
Well,
maybe not affecting you directly or your case, but the path moving forward for everybody and everything. You know, they don't have anything, but here we are.
Right. The one thing they do is they just keep going. So Ingram, in their minds, did not happen. So I don't know if they're going to be the same with the Emergencies Act. Like, I think it's going to get harder and harder. You know, I know that there's a lot of lawsuits that have now been filed because of the lifting or the decision on the Emergencies Act invocation. However, like, I don't know, like, it's just bananas.
Yeah, I'm at a dead end with that question because what do you do when the people who are supposed to be upholding, say, democracy, the rule of law, all of those pinnacle institutions are just standing there staring at you and doing nothing to uphold it anymore?
No, and they're continuing with like all the wokeness, like the cultural training, right, that Lani was talking about a bit earlier. There's also the pseudo legal notices that continue to come out from the Law Society. So they send us regular notices, basically saying that there's a group of men and women that we are to stay away from because they're supposedly violent. And so again, like that whittling down of who we can represent. So essentially, what they're doing is making us the gatekeepers of who can move forward with any type of action, which is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So. Yeah, so there's kind of at least those three things that are happening in the background with the Law Society that I don't think the average person knows about.
Isn't that in essence really the Law Society deciding who is allowed representation or not?
Yeah.
It's evolving into that. You can see it. Yeah. When they start directing the education, sorry, Doris. Yeah. When they start directing the education, you got to wonder, right? And I got to give some credit here. There's another lawyer named Roger Song, and he's heading up that judicial review. So this is related to that Rule 67.4. See, the public may not know this story. This is an interesting story. And again, it does relate to Doris because this is all with the whole Law Society movement, and a lot of professional organizations are doing this. But what what happens here is that Rule 67.4 prescribes your education, no different from, in China. Roger was pointing out that, you'd have to take a certain course at the end of your legal education, and you'd have to pass that, and that would be with communism. And as long as you pass that, then you're a lawyer. So think about it. Your whole career, despite all the education, is riding on this one course, really. So if we get into this here where we're starting to prescribe education, we're in trouble. And people might be out there saying, yeah, well, I've met a lot of dumb lawyers, like, come on, you need education at some point in your life. This is correct. You need education as a lawyer and a professional throughout your entire career. That is your obligation. So you don't pack it up from school, go home and have no more homework. It doesn't work that way. But the point is that you learn to think and you learn to function within your chosen specialty. And then you can reach out and you can help people. You can be creative. You can work within the confines of the law. Now, if we have a professional organization that is prescribing our education in that regard, and this is not about, Lani being a proficient lawyer. This is the last training we took was 6 hours of Indigenous cultural training. Okay, there's modules planned for sexual orientation and all of those topics out there. What does that have to do with my skill and capability to function as an ethical lawyer with integrity? Right?
Well, this is something that I can say because I'm not in the profession that you guys are, but all of these things point to are evidence, more and more evidence of the social re-engineering that is actually taking place in our country, where everything is Alice in Wonderland, inverted, the opposite of what they portray. The propaganda and their censorship, all of it is symbiotic. None of this can live in and survive without having each other. But this is where it comes down to, I think the convergence that terrifies me is our society and our legal system. All of our systems are designed and built, cultured, nurtured, evolved over 150 years on the same code of ethics, the same social contract, the same social contract. We as Canadians know the rules of Canada, and we agree to live by them. And now they are completely flipping that upside down on us. So if we allow that social re-engineering, then our legal system will no longer work in that capacity. So it's again back to that the local bully is telling everybody else that they're going to make the rules as they go, and they'll tell you tomorrow.
Yeah. And if it contradicts the legislation from our legislators, they'll just use policy. They'll draft policy to get around it. So you can see the whole structure, the design of it, right? It's sad. It's sad. It's like running uphill all the time. It's a little deflating, especially when you know that this is the truth, but they're pointing you over here and saying, no, this is reality. This is your reality,
Your reality. That's the key. They talk about unconscious bias. Like they're telling us that we don't even know, like the biases that we have, right? Like we're thinking in a way that we don't even know that we're thinking. It's bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
The astroturfing and gaslighting is, I don't think that there's been a bigger experiment in that in human history. And I think that's part and parcel of the social reengineering project. The COVID kept us isolated, demoralized, confused, and waiting for the next programming from the only approved sources. And we pretty much turned into 1984 and the Animal Farm all at once.
Yeah. We can outsmart this, though. We can.
Well, and this is where I'd like to get to.
We have to use our logic. We just have to use our logic. We can't deal with what we're being fed here, guys. Honestly, I want to tell a funny story, because when this all happened with the Rule 67.4, I did sign the petition. And what the public doesn't realize is that, the reaction was to paint us all who signed this petition to try to force a vote with the Law Society to get rid of this prescriptive education rule. What happened were 50 of us signed a petition. Now think about it. If you're going to sign a petition and you're going to have it be binding, what do you have to be? You have to be an active member who's in good standing. So we were all active members, and there was more than 50, but anyways, in good standing. We'd all taken this Indigenous cultural training. It was not about that. It's about the prescriptive nature here. So the problem was to be referred to as a racist. Like I had media contact my office because apparently I'm a double racist because I'm in Lawyers for Truth. And this whole time that this is happening and we're organizing the vote, I'm just laughing because I have a Pakistani lawyer here. Like, he's my associate and he's been here 9.5 years. So if you want to call me a racist because I don't agree that we should be prescribed the education, I think we should be competent. I think you should have to study. I think you should have to continue to train. But if you're going to prescribe education on political ideologies and propaganda, no, it's not appropriate. You're prescribing my thought now. This is where we go, right?
And the biggest comparison in the room there is Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And this is in essence now what they're trying to implement at the individual practicing lawyer level.
Yeah, but it's all professions. So you have to picture this on a grand scale, because this is not just going to be that you leave your house, you have a problem, you need a lawyer. What happens when you leave your house and you have a problem, you need a doctor or an accountant or,
all of the professions that exist to protect we the people, the doctors, the lawyers, the psychologists, the policemen, they're all being arbitrarily prescribed their allowed thought process.
And ask yourself this: how is a professional body any different from a union? Right? It all goes together. It's all the same pattern. Yeah.
There's so much of it. So where are the checks and balances? Isn't that what the Law Society is supposed to be? One of the checks and balances in the systems?
It's like Doris said, there is a quality there. There is an importance to the role. But the concern is, have we lost the focus of it? Because if I roll the carpet right back to the oath a lawyer takes, is that not the essence of what we do as lawyers? Is that not what we promised on our consciences that we would not breach? Isn't it? And we're being told in a different direction. Yeah,
those are the foundations of our functioning society. Just like our Constitution, our Charter of Rights, our Bill of Rights, all of these things. Those are supposed to be the foundations of our society, and they're saying, no, you're crazy if that's what you believe.
Yeah,
this is. I keep having this echo in my head about the story of Socrates and the greatest democracy in history in Greece, where they executed him for wrongthink. How far away are we from that?
Not far at all.
Really, I mean, that's the slope that we're on. Mm-hmm. And this is maybe just me overreacting a little bit, but I tend to dumb it down to the lowest denominator so that I can process it, and that's kind of the direction that I see at the end of the road here.
I wish I had a different answer. I really do. I do. I wish I could inject hope. And, the only thing I see, and this is, what a lot of my speaking is about right now, it's all about us individually. And it's about us saying, and it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, don't cross your moral line. We all have to roll out our moral lines, and we cannot cross that. Because I said this on the last show, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, but the first step was to say, hey, would you go and put a mask on somebody, even if it made them sick, right? And then the second step was, would you make somebody take a medication, even if it might kill them or make them sick as well? People said yes. And the third, now they're right in your home. They're at your job. They're at work waiting for you. That, you go into the bank, the head office told me I had to do this. No, this is immoral, So if you look at the big picture, it's going to be about how well all of us can maintain our moral lines. We know the difference between right and wrong. We learned that when we were little kids. We can look at our organizations and say, wait a minute, that oath is conflicting with what you're telling me to do. And this is where we have to go with this. There has to be more human restraint here. There just has to be. So
I think that we're on all levels, we're seeing, I don't want to say the pendulum shifting, but the tide is definitely moving in a different direction over the last 6 months, a year. And I think 2024 is going to be a monumental year for humanity. And good news, I don't know if you guys caught the news today, but BlackRock and JP Morgan have bailed on the DEI agenda completely. So that is going to simplify a lot of the fights moving forward, because a lot of this, what we're dealing with, is the social reconstruction, reengineering, is to implement that as the correct thing. So I think it's important, and it's because of fighting back like we are. It may seem hopeless, but obviously it isn't, or you guys wouldn't be heroes. Right? I'm just teasing. Don't spank me.
No, but it is each individual that makes up a collective effort, doesn't it? Right? We have to. Yeah,
it does, and with the, it's only been, I think, 2 days since some of the prosecutions against some of those involved at the highest levels for invoking these emergency measures have started to be filed, but it's already international news. These things are going to make it even more and more and more difficult for the ruling regime to maintain their direction. They're getting very erratic, very willy-nilly, very panicked and frantic. So the censorship is going to get worse, guys, across the social media platforms. I'm seeing it across here on mine today. So we're all taking part in that disinformation campaign of telling the truth, because it's disinformation is hard on their narrative.
Yeah, definitely.
So with all of this changing landscape, I know that you guys have got a lot on your plate, both of you guys, and this is where you guys have to get through right now, this battle that you're in. Doris, what's the timeline on this, and what are you hoping for? What's realistic between, and maybe Lani, you guys can both chime in on this. We're getting down in the last 10 minutes here, and I'd like to kind of set the stage for where you guys are going with this and what you guys are getting ready for.
Well, we are going to actually challenge the decision to move this ahead to a hearing for the reasons that I stated earlier. They don't have the Section 59 notice. They investigated me without telling me that they were. And they also, they were harassing me directly as well. Like, they would actually sometimes exclude my lawyers and communicate with me directly, which is totally improper. And as lawyers themselves, that's law 101. They should know better than to do that. So, but anyway, yeah, I think our next move is really just to go into the court, and the court's obviously not a desirable place to be either. But we're still looking for our remedy and hoping that we can get it nullified there. The second thing is they have set a 2-week hearing, but I've actually never denied that I did these exemption letters and cards. I did them, and they're out there. I've admitted it. I've given them,
it wasn't a crime. It was your job. And
so I'm baffled by, what do you need 2 weeks to prove? What is it that you actually are trying to prove? And so, I guess the lesson in this is the process is the punishment, right? So, they put me through, like I said, a lot in terms of me, the interview, all the correspondence that I had to respond to, all that. And, just like I said, the harassing nature their letters and the threatening nature of them. Yeah, so I don't know. What was I going to say? I lost my thought there. Sorry.
No, I just want to say too that, keep in mind the timeline here, because people maybe don't realize this. This is 2.5 years of Doris's life here. Okay. These are lawyers and costs for her.
That's what I talk about. The cost.
Yeah.
They actually have, so they have actually tabulated all the costs of the time that they've spent on this, which I believe is over $10,000. So I don't know if they're going to be coming after me for that. And then, the cost of attending a 2-week hearing, like that's astronomical. 2 weeks of my time and paying Lani and all of that. So, I'm hoping that we can obviously get this dealt with in the court beforehand so it doesn't proceed. But I mean, who knows? Actually, I had written down one thing that I came across in their documentation. And one of the things that they do say is that I was not a certified medical professional and had no lawful basis for stating that individuals who receive mask exemptions were exempt from masking requirements. I never held myself out to be a medical professional. Like,
it wasn't about medical profession.
I've
It was
been in
about
legal
law.
advice, and it was clear. Like, I had lawyer, it was on my letter. The letters were all on lawyer letterhead. Like, I had my actual member number on most of the, it's just, I don't even know how you go about defending this case. Like, it's so bizarre.
Swearing a declaration, basically. Yeah. So it's in front of somebody was swearing in front of her. That's the way that it went. Like, it was a notice of liability, right? It doesn't say I'm medically exempt, and it doesn't make all sorts of representations. And no, it was the individual whose body, they own their own body. They were the ones making the declaration in front of Doris.
Right. And whatever happened to my body, my choice? Like, where did that go?
Yeah.
Well, liberals used to fight against the establishment, against warfare, against taxes, against oppression, against censorship, against all of those things. I don't think we have any liberals left in Canada, I'm afraid.
No, not anymore. No.
Well, I last thoughts on where you guys are going to be in the next little while. What are you guys going to be watching and paying attention to the most? Where do you think we should be paying attention to the most, and how can we help do this? I'm grateful for this discussion tonight, because this is a look behind that green curtain in Oz, and it's on the record now. So it's unfortunate that you've this has cost so much, Doris, of your life. I'm grateful that we've got a chance now to have a peek at it and understand it, and the sacrifice and the price you paid for all of this, and we want to make sure that we get the rest of the story when it's finished being told, I guess.
Well, Lawyers for Truth, our motto is always do not comply, and that remains true today. So I don't know what they're going to throw at us next. We are going to be obviously watching what happens with some of the positive developments that have happened in our favor recently. I think that's going to make a difference, but they haven't really been stopping in terms of throwing the next curveball at us. And so we still need to be very vigilant and really know who we are and our strength. And one of the things that occurred with the work that we were doing with providing mask exemptions and that sort of thing was we had to flex our muscles. We had to really dig deep and say no, learn how to say no. And so I'm actually really grateful for COVID and masking and all that for that reason, because I think it's really given me a lot of strength and a lot of understanding of who I am, what my rights are, and that kind of thing. And so I think it's preparing us for the next level, whatever that looks like. I think we're ready, and I just hope that all of your viewers are too.
Well, one of the things Lani's probably heard me try to console my audience before with this one, but the wheels of justice turn so much slower than the wheels of the insanity around us. So the level of patience that you ladies have, shown in this, and to maintain your strength and your line in the sand is the inspirational lesson I think we all need to take from this. Took 90 years to get here. We've only been kind of putting it together, a resistance for 3 to 4, and I think we're making great progress and headway. So I have a lot of faith, and it's thanks to ladies like you that I get the opportunity to meet and share with the rest of the world. So thank you so very much for all of that. Last thoughts, Lani, for you on the way out here, and I'll let you guys both go because I'm pretty sure you
Yeah.
guys have a life.
Yeah, it's almost a tangent, but I got a call like a couple of weeks ago from a friend of mine who's a realtor, and she brought my attention to the CREA requirements when you sell and buy property. Okay. And I just want people to understand that they're actually collecting information out there. There's 20 questions. And the questions they ask you when you want to buy and sell property through a realtor include what if you have a criminal record, include your political affiliations. And I just want to draw attention to this because I have a theory, and I'm not going to say this is fact, but I have a theory that it's professionals, it's the service through government, it's banks. That's how they're going to formulate this digital ID. So I actually kind of see it coming. I see what's happening to Doris. I see the narrative, and all of these pieces really go together in the grand scheme of things. So I guess, engage in your critical thinking skills, flex your brain, because and don't just take things at surface value. Read what you're signing nowadays, because it all comes together. Like, this is all happening for a reason. And I look at how the professions are changing, and I can see how there's going to be certain people that are going to play gatekeeper. And we've already seen some of them, but I still think that the professions are going to rise. They're going to be expected to pin it all down, pin all the corners down. So
I've been doing a series of international discussions and looking at the lowest common denominators of what is afflicting all of our nations, and really the points that it keeps coming back to are the public-private partnerships that have infiltrated every industry, every profession, every community, every municipality, all the way top to bottom, and they all are plugged in to the same extension cord hybrid monster beast. It all comes from Geneva and Davos, ultimately through the switchboards, all the way down to the local hamlets and villages. So we're seeing a huge education process, learning curve here of people understanding where the infiltration is directly in their neighborhood, and it is there, in finding those public-private partnerships that are the source of the bad water that we're all getting.
Yeah, literally.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and shedding a little bit of light on that and giving us a glimpse where we don't usually get to see. And I look forward to some updates anytime.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much for everything you do. Yeah.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll put the rest of the community out of their misery before they're going looking for attorneys to protect themselves from protect their brains. So have a great night, ladies. All right, guys. That was a very interesting story, and that was this was I kept saying it, behind a curtain we don't often get to see, and breaking it down to the lowest common denominators, the same patterns, the same thinking mindset, doubling down. How dare we? And I think it's important for people to get a glimpse of all of the different professions and industries and places where this ideology is infecting us. I know these ladies are in Alberta, but that's the point of this, is understanding that this the same mess has infiltrated across the board. No matter where we are, might smell a little bit different. It might be a little bit more ripe in some places and a little less ripe in others. But ultimately, at the end of the day, all of this stank comes from the same place, and the sooner we get it figured out on where we can and should make an impact, and then the sooner we can end this insanity. And this insanity is absolutely unsustainable. So, with that, I love you all. Stay strong, stay free, stay brave, and geez, I don't even know what to tell you is coming up next. So I guess stay tuned for more. And I love you all. Bye for now.